Unaware her dad, who died few months ago, was a multi-billionaire. 27-year-old marketing analyst Hannah Cole stood in the kitchen of the tiny apartment she shared with her husband Derek, still wearing the oversized sweater she used to hide the weight she'd gained after her father's funeral. Derek, obsessed with image, status, and the luxury lifestyle he saw on social media, claimed her grief made her let herself go. But he didn't know she had been quietly paying most of their bills, and he definitely didn't know the truth about her father's empire. But when Derek served her divorce papers that morning, telling her she was too fat and he needed a woman who matched his goals so he could marry his mistress, he was unaware of her 300 million fortune and unaware of who she really was becoming behind the silence. What she did next shocked him. But what exactly did she do? And why was he the last to know? Hannah Cole had learned how to shrink herself long before her weight ever did. It started in childhood, with a father whose brilliance commanded entire boardrooms, but who softened only for her, and a mother who died when Hannah was 9, leaving an emotional crater she spent years trying to fill. By the time she reached her mid-20s, she had become the kind of woman who apologized for existing. Soft-spoken, hard-working, chronically overlooked, and far too generous for her own good. Derek knew that, and he used it well. On the morning everything changed, Hannah stood barefoot on the cool tiles of her narrow kitchen, steam rising from the open kettle as if the apartment itself were exhaling. Her father's death 3 months earlier had broken her in ways she didn't have words for. She had gained weight, not from gluttony, but from grief attaching itself to her body the way sorrow does when it has nowhere else to go. Derek's eyes had tracked the changes like a prosecutor building a case. She stirred instant coffee slowly, staring at the swirl, trying to ignore the tension clinging to the air. Derek had been pacing since dawn, fully dressed in the cologne-heavy suit he always wore when he wanted to feel powerful. He finally stopped, planted himself in front of her, and exhaled dramatically. "We need to talk." Hannah froze. Those 4 words had never meant anything good in her life. He slid a manila envelope across the counter toward her. "It's time." She blinked. "Time for what?" "Time for you to accept reality." He crossed his arms, jaw tightening. "You're not the woman I married." The words stung, even though she'd rehearsed hearing them in her nightmares. "Derek, I'm grieving. I lost my father." "And I lost my attraction," he shot back without hesitation. "You gained weight, you stopped dressing like someone who cares, and honestly, I deserve better. I can't build a future with someone who's—" He gestured vaguely at her body. "Not disciplined." Her throat tightened. "I'm doing my best." "Your best isn't enough." He said it casually, almost bored, as if stating a fact he'd concluded after a long audit of her usefulness. Then he dropped the bomb. "I'm marrying Clarissa." The name hit her like cold water. His mistress, his co-worker, his gleaming, social media curated fantasy partner. The one who posted gym videos and luxury restaurant photos as if her life were one long audition for someone like him. "We're in love," he continued, "and Clarissa sees the potential in me. She sees leadership, vision, opportunities." Hannah swallowed. "I saw all that in you too." "No," he said. "You saw a project. She sees a man." Something inside Hannah cracked so quietly she wondered if he heard it. He pushed the envelope closer. "Sign the divorce papers, Hannah. It's for the best." She didn't touch it. Couldn't. "Derek, we promised we'd stand by each other." "And I am standing by myself," he said, picking up his keys. "And that's enough." He headed for the door but paused, turning back with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "By the way, maybe when you lose some weight, you'll find someone who doesn't mind settling." The door clicked shut. Silence swallowed the room. Hannah's hands trembled, not with anger, but with the shock of someone who had been blindsided by the one person she had trusted to stay. She pressed her palms against her thighs, grounding herself. The kettle clicked off behind her, final and abrupt. Then her phone buzzed. A message from her father's longtime attorney, Richard Hawthorne, the man who had practically helped raise her after her mother's death. "Hannah, we need to finalize matters regarding your inheritance. Your father's estate is ready for distribution. Please confirm your availability to review the portfolio." Her breath caught. Inheritance? Her father left her his house, yes. His personal effects, yes. But that didn't require a portfolio. Her thumb hovered. The screen lit again, another message longer. There are details you were not aware of. Your father's assets are substantial. When you're ready, we can discuss the full scope. He left letters for you as well. I know this is difficult timing, but you must know the truth. Her pulse skittered. Truth? Assets? Substantial? For a moment, the weight of Derek's cruelty felt distant, overshadowed by something deeper, older, and strangely luminous, a possibility she had never allowed herself to consider. She stared at the manila envelope on the counter, Derek's last insult sealed inside. Then she picked up her phone with steady hands. I'm ready, she typed. She didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything in her life shifted. The moment the woman Derek underestimated began to rise. And the $300 million fortune waiting for her was only the beginning. The law firm's building rose like a steel monument against the late morning sky, its glass facade reflecting both sunlight and the fragments of Hannah's scattered life. She hadn't been here since she was a teenager, back when her father would bring her along for short meetings, letting her sit in the corner with a soda while he negotiated partnerships worth more than entire neighborhoods. She always thought he was just comfortable, maybe upper middle class, maybe a little more. He'd never once lived like a billionaire. He'd worn simple shirts, cooked his own meals, and told her that money was only a shadow unless it was used to protect the people you love. She didn't know that shadow was bigger than entire cities. The elevator dinged and opened into a quiet lobby, trimmed with mahogany. A receptionist greeted her warmly. Too warmly, she thought, as if she were greeting someone far more important than she felt. Ms. Cole, Mr. Hawthorne is expecting you. Of course he was. Her father's lawyer had always been a composed, thoughtful man. Silver hair, precise speech, the kind of presence that made you feel like the world wasn't completely chaotic. When he stepped out of his office, his expression softened. Hannah. He said her name as though it mattered, as though she mattered. She swallowed the emotion climbing her throat. Hi, Richard. Come in, we have a lot to discuss. His office was unchanged, bookshelves full of leather-bound volumes, a crystal decanter untouched on the credenza, and a desk so polished it reflected the ceiling lights. But the weight of the moment pressed heavier than the decor. Richard gestured for her to sit. Before we go into the documents, I want you to understand something. Hannah braced. Your father loved you more than anything in this world. Everything he built with you in mind. And he spent his final years preparing for this moment. Her brows creased. Preparing for what exactly? Richard opened a thick folder, one she had never seen before. Your inheritance, she exhaled slowly. I know he left me the house and some insurance, but Derek looked through the will before. There wasn't anything. Richard held up a hand gently. Hannah, what you saw was the public will. Public? Yes, by law. But your father also created a private trust, one only activated upon verifying your mental and emotional readiness after his passing. His voice softened. He didn't want the world to know. He didn't want opportunists to circle you. He wanted you to live freely, without being hunted. Her breath stalled. Opportunists? She shook her head. Richard, my dad was comfortable, yes, but your father, Richard said carefully, was not comfortable. He was a multi-billionaire. The words floated for a second, then slammed into her with brutal force. Billionaire? She whispered. Richard nodded. A self-made one. Real estate, infrastructure, energy, tech patents, international portfolios. He kept everything under holding companies no one knew belonged to him. He lived simply because he believed wealth should be invisible until needed. Her vision blurred for a moment, as if the room were shifting. Derek had called her fat, unattractive, worthless, replaceable. And all this time, she had been the only daughter of a man who could buy the building Derek worked in 10 times over without blinking. Richard continued gently. Your father left you the entire portfolio, approximately $300 million in liquid assets, several billion more in long-term holdings. And something else. He slid an envelope toward her, handwritten. Her name curved across the front in her father's familiar, steady script. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. My Hannah, if you are reading this, you are stronger than you believe. I built an empire quietly so you could live loudly, free from the poison of people who only love wealth and never love souls. You must guard your heart. Not everyone who smiles at you deserves access to it. When the world turns cruel, rise, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. You are my legacy, not the money. Trudy, a tear escaped down her cheek, warm and humiliating and liberating all at once. Richard waited until she composed herself. There's more complexity to this situation, she frowned. More? Yes. Your father anticipated that you might marry someone who wouldn't value you, someone who might attempt to claim your assets. The trust is fortified, airtight. No spouse, no partner, no court can touch your inheritance. Her heart clenched. He really thought that far ahead? He knew the world, Richard said simply. Hannah leaned back, absorbing the truth. For the first time in months, maybe years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, anchored, rooted in something bigger than her pain. Richard opened another document. We'll go through each section together, but there is one thing you must tell me. What? He met her eyes. Are you currently in a stable, supportive marriage? The question hung in the room like a blade. She thought of Derek telling her she was too fat to love, too heavy to keep, too unworthy to stay. She thought of him planning a future with Clarissa, believing she was beneath him. And for the first time, the humiliation didn't crush her. It fueled her. No, she said quietly. I'm not. Richard nodded once. Then let's begin. As he began outlining the assets in detail, Hannah felt something shifting inside her, something her father had planted long ago, but grief had buried. Strength, worth, fire. She wasn't the woman Derek thought she was. Not anymore. The sun was beginning to set by the time Hannah stepped out of the law firm, but the warmth on her skin felt different, as if the world itself were recognizing a version of her she hadn't met yet. The city around her hummed with ordinary life, people rushing to buses, food vendors calling out orders, office workers sharing tired laughter. But inside her, something extraordinary had awakened. She walked slowly, letting the new reality settle. $300 million in liquid assets, several billion in holdings, an empire her father had hidden not to deprive her, but to protect her. Her phone buzzed. Derek, of course. She almost ignored it, but something, maybe dignity, maybe curiosity, made her swipe to answer. His voice came through sharp and annoyed. You didn't sign the papers. She inhaled, calm. I had an appointment. You always have an excuse, he snapped. This is why I can't do this anymore. You're slow with everything. Slow with decisions. Slow with your appearance. Slow with taking responsibility. Hannah's grip tightened on her phone, but her voice remained steady. Derek, what do you want? I want us to handle this like adults. He exhaled with the exaggerated frustration he used whenever he felt he was the superior one. Clarissa and I are touring condos downtown tomorrow. I need you to sign before then. I can't have you dragging this out and ruining my new start. She almost laughed. Her father's words echoed. Guard your heart. I'll handle it, she said calmly. He didn't hear the shift in her tone, or maybe he heard it and assumed it was weakness. Derek had no concept of strength that wasn't loud, arrogant, or adorned in polished shoes. Quiet strength, her kind, was invisible to him. Good, he muttered. I'll come by tomorrow morning. Don't, she said. I won't be home. That seemed to rattle him. Since when do you have anywhere to go? The casual insult slid off her like water. She didn't owe him a single explanation. She ended the call before he could continue. As she walked home, her mind drifted unexpectedly, not toward the billions, but toward the past, toward Derek, toward the long, slow unraveling she'd blamed herself for far too long. She remembered how they met, a quiet evening at a networking mixer when she was 24, standing alone near the bar, nursing a soda because she didn't trust her stomach with alcohol. Derek had approached her with that bright smile and sharp confidence that filled the room. He'd made her laugh, made her feel seen, made her believe she was stepping into a love that would heal the cracks life had carved into her. But over time, the compliments turned into suggestions. The suggestions turned into corrections. The corrections turned into criticism delivered with a smile. And criticism eventually became the only language he spoke to her. He began monitoring her meals. Maybe skip the carbs tonight. Babe. He began choosing her outfits. This hides your body better. He began comparing her to women online. Just try to get close to the shape. And whenever she cried, he'd say, "You're overreacting. I'm helping you." She had confused control for care. She had mistaken manipulation for love. By the time her father died, she was emotionally exhausted. Eating became the smallest comfort she could give herself without being judged. And grief expanded her body faster than her mind could catch up. Derek never forgave her for her pain. As she neared her apartment, a memory hit her with stunning force. A moment she had buried. It was 2 years into their marriage. She'd been promoted at work, a raise she was incredibly proud of. She'd rushed home, excited to share the news. Derek had been scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up. "Hey," she said breathlessly. "Guess what? They gave me the digital marketing lead position. It's a huge team and a huge response." He held up a hand. "Can we talk about this later? I'm reading something important." The celebration in her chest had collapsed on itself. Later, he'd said something like, "Congrats, I guess," without ever asking what it meant to her. She remembered feeling silly for ever thinking he'd care. She tried to push the memory away, but now she understood something she couldn't articulate back then. Derek had never felt proud of her. He had only felt threatened. She reached their apartment building and stopped at the entrance, staring up at the dull structure. For years, she had tried to make this place a home. Now it felt like a cage she had been too polite to escape. Inside, the air smelled of Derek's cologne, sharp, synthetic, suffocating. Their framed wedding photo hung crooked on the wall. She walked past it without looking. In the bedroom, she opened the closet and stared at the clothes she used to love wearing. Bright colors, silky fabrics, dresses with shape and personality. She had stuffed them in the back months ago because Derek said they drew attention in the wrong ways. She pulled them all forward one by one, touching the fabrics like she was meeting old friends. Then she saw the outfit she wore the night of their first anniversary. A deep emerald green dress her father bought her as a surprise. She had been radiant that night, confident, joyful, glowing. Derek had told her, "It's pretty, but it's a bit much, don't you think? Maybe tone it down next time." She hadn't worn it since. Now she held it against herself in the mirror. It still fit, not perfectly, but authentically. She smiled. For the first time in so long, the reflection looking back at her felt like the beginning of someone she wanted to meet. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Richard. "Hannah, we should also discuss your father's final instructions. There's one more thing he left under your authority." Her eyes narrowed in curiosity. Another inheritance? Another secret? Or something even bigger? She had no idea the next revelation would not only change her future, but give her the power to decide Derek's. Hannah didn't sleep that night, not because of pain. She'd carried enough of that to know its weight by memory, but because something new had settled inside her. Purpose. Her father had left her wealth, yes, but also clarity. A clarity she'd never permitted herself to feel while shrinking in someone else's shadow. By morning, she had made her decision. She showered, put on the emerald dress Derek once called too much, slid her feet into a simple pair of heels, and let her hair fall naturally around her shoulders. She applied no heavy makeup, just enough to highlight her eyes, the same eyes her father always said held her mother's warmth. For the first time in a long time, she looked like someone whose life wasn't begging for permission to exist. Her phone buzzed. Derek again. "I'm outside. Don't make this dramatic," she smiled. Oh, she would make nothing dramatic. She would make it definitive. She grabbed the envelope Richard gave her that morning, this time labeled not with legal jargon, but with a note from her father. "Give this only when your heart is ready to stop apologizing for beating. Her heels clicked confidently as she walked down the stairs. Outside, Derek leaned on his car, scrolling through his phone, wearing a designer shirt Clarissa probably convinced him was in season. He didn't even look up when she stepped outside. When he finally did, his eyes widened, not with admiration, but confusion. "You're dressed up," he said, almost thrown off balance. She didn't respond. She opened the passenger door, sat down, and closed it softly. The silence unsettled him before she'd even spoken a word. Inside the car, Derek cleared his throat, adjusting the mirror as if he needed to reestablish dominance. "We'll go to a cafe, neutral ground." He hesitated, then added dismissively, "I didn't expect you to actually put effort into your appearance today." Hannah looked straight ahead. "Drive, Derek." He blinked. She had never spoken like that before. The cafe was quiet, just a few morning customers scattered around. Derek chose a corner table. Strategic, so no one could overhear him handling his wife. He slid the divorce papers across to her, face tight with impatience. "Just sign. Clarissa and I have a lot to do today." She tapped the envelope from her father on the table. "We'll get to that." Derek frowned. "What's that?" "Something my father left for this moment," she said calmly. Derek scoffed. "Oh, Lord, Hannah, don't tell me your father left you some emotional letter. I don't have time for sentimental breakdowns. She opened the envelope and placed the document inside it in front of him. He snatched it up impatiently, then paused, then stared, his face drained of color. What is this?" he whispered. "It's what's called a trust transfer declaration," she said. "The lawyers can explain it better, but in summary, I inherited my father's holdings. All of them." Derek swallowed. "Holdings like a house, a savings account, a $300 million trust, billions more in assets, real estate portfolios, energy contracts, tech investments." Her voice was soft, matter-of-fact, eerily calm. He blinked rapidly, chest rising and falling too fast. You're what? A millionaire? A multi-hundred millionaire," she corrected, "with the potential of more as the trust matures." He stared at her as though seeing her for the first time. She allowed the silence to stretch, measured, powerful, unhurried. Then she leaned forward slightly. "And you divorced me," she said, "for being too fat." Derek flinched. Too fat to love, too fat to support, too fat to be worth standing beside. She kept her tone even, but each word landed like a hammer. "You thought I was beneath you, disposable, replaceable." "Hannah," he stammered, voice cracking. "You didn't tell me. You didn't ask." She lifted the papers Richard had added to the envelope. "And before you embarrass yourself further, my father structured my trust so no spouse, past or future, can ever touch a cent. You left before you ever knew what you were throwing away." "Hannah, please." Derek leaned forward, desperation dripping through his voice. "I made mistakes. I said stupid things. I wasn't myself." "You were exactly yourself," she said quietly. The truth wrapped the table like a noose. Derek's voice broke. "Hannah, I love you. I always did. I was stressed, scared. Clarissa pressured me." Hannah lifted a hand, silencing him. "Derek, this isn't about money. This is about value. The value you never saw in me because it didn't fit your idea of perfection." His face crumpled. "Hannah, please." He reached for her hand. She slid it away. Slowly, deliberately, she picked up the divorce papers he had so proudly brought and signed them with one single stroke. Clean, bold, final. She placed them in his trembling hands. "Congratulations, Derek," she whispered. "You got everything you wanted." He stared at the signature like it was a death sentence. "But, Hannah, we can fix this." "We can't," she said, rising from her chair. "Because you didn't break me. You revealed me. And I'm done living small so you could feel big." She stood tall, emerald dress glowing under the morning light pouring through the cafe window. Derek remained there, frozen, shattered, the weight of his decision sinking into bones that would ache with regret for years. And Hannah walked out without looking back. Outside, the breeze lifted her hair gently, like a benediction. The world looked different, brighter, cleaner, fuller, because she was finally walking in it as someone who understood her own worth. She wasn't just the daughter of a multi-billionaire. She wasn't just a woman who survived heartbreak. She was a woman becoming. And for the first time in her life, she didn't apologize for it.